is it that, what is the cause behind the gap, and why is it that, for instance, women are leaving or women are not advancing? And I then advise on future action. That can include training programs for leaders or training programs for staff, which I could then deliver. But sometimes it's really just HR who changes the processes, or we change together at we look at the recruitment or promotion processes. So that's the sort of things I do. A lot of talks as well to help organizations raise awareness, and events. I mean, I recently did a large piece of research for the Royal Academy, making a gender pay gap action plan for organizations in engineering. I've made an e-learning module for people entering organizations, teaching them about inclusive behaviors, because this organization said to me, look, we've got this amazing culture here, but now, because our organization is moving, we have a lot of people leaving, and we're hiring a lot of new people. And we really want them to know what an amazing place we are, and what we're expecting with regards to behavior. So we made an e-learning module for them, a bit like like an induction module when people enter the company. So that was great fun too. So for today, really, it's, I thought it'd be good if you can introduce yourselves, especially as we are just a small group. Hopefully we get a few more people to join, but it's also recorded, so there'll definitely be also more people listening in later. So do you want to start, Sarah? Just a quick introduction, your name, your job title, and what brings you here today.
Yep. So I don't know if you can hear me okay, but I'm Sarah Turnick, and I work for Capita. We manage the Network Rail recruitment for white collar contingent workers, and I am assisting them with what they call their 20 by 20 project, which is to increase the number of females they have in the organisation to 20% by the year 2020. Capita's contract numbers are already looking about 28% of the workforce we have at Network Rail are females. But like you mentioned, the areas we seem to struggle with are engineering, IT, and some of the construction roles. So it's really just see if we can get any tips, hints about how we can attract more women into those areas for Network Rail, because as I said, it is a real push for them to hit that 20% by the year 2020.
Yeah, cool. Fabulous. Mark, we're just doing introductions. So
hi there.
Hi. If you're listening, just mute yourself, which saves on all kinds of sounds going around. And then Claire, would you like to introduce yourself then, please?
Hi, I'm Claire Spencer, work for Northern Gas Networks as risk and investment manager. So I don't actually work in HR. However, I've been tasked as part of our business plan submission to look at workforce resilience. Okay. Obviously, we're a gas company supplying the north of England, and we have a lot of problems with recruiting women. We've done a lot of steps in terms of trying to overcome that, especially looking at how we word our adverts, but we're very much early on in that process, so I'm just keen to hear other people's experiences and how they've overcome issues around recruiting women, really.
Oh, very good. Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, changing language in adverts is a powerful one sometimes. And Victoria, do you want to share who you are and what brings you here? You need to unmute yourself. Victoria, are you still there? Victoria? No, clearly. I mean, she's somehow there, but I don't know why we can't. Are you on mute, Victoria? Hello?
What's happening?
No, she's not on mute, so I don't know what it is. Oh, well, meanwhile, Mark, maybe you can introduce yourself.
Can everybody hear me?
Yeah, fabulous.
Oh, perfect. Yeah. Hi there. So my name's Mark. I'm the talent resource manager for CBRE, Data Center Solutions. Inga, I think you met with Hannah Ormondroyd. Yeah. She works. I work with Hannah, and she recommended contacting yourself. And basically, I work in the, as I said, data center solutions part of the business, which is very male orientated, and we're looking at steps to try and make our our intake more diverse and looking, keen to sort of find out information and ways to try and drive things forward. So that's a bit from me.
Yeah. Oh, well, fabulous. Thank you. So it's all about women for everyone, right? That's interesting. So because we're looking a bit wider today, but we'll focus on women in that case. And Claire, I mean, no, Victoria, she's dropped out entirely now. Oh, well, I can tell you that. Let me see who Victoria works for Atos, which is obviously a software developer. So hopefully she'll come and join us there. And I know they do a lot on recruiting women as well. So what I wanted to do today, I was like really, really keen to invite Colin Barnes here, who I've met, who actually has done a lot of great work for the police and after that for the Manchester Fire Service. But unfortunately, he's long-term not well, so he will not be able to join us. But I did an interview with him and several interviews actually and made that into a case study. So what I thought I'd do, I just share his experience and then we sort of respond point by point. So I'll show you what I mean. I'll share my screen here. I made a nice, let me see, here we are, I think. Yeah, can you all see my screen?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So, oh, well, how does this work? Let me just, yeah, this is what I wanted to show you. So basically they've sort of done what I summarized in a 6-point plan to start recruiting more women in the fire service. And I thought we could look at what they did and then we can invite you to share what your experience is, whether you recognize this or whether you have questions about it, because I probably know a lot more from Colin than or from other organizations potentially. So does that work for you? Yeah, I can see some people nodding, so that's good. And Claire, you will just have to, So what the first thing they did was, well, basically how they were recruiting people was very much, you could just send an online form. And then if you sent the online form, you got an invite, and then you had a panel interview with 5 current fire, you can't say man, right? Sorry, fire, what's the word? Please help me here. Fire officers? Yep. With 5 current fire officers, you had a panel interview, and that was pretty much how you got in. And they hadn't actually done a lot of recruiting at all because the budget had just been going down. But then actually a couple of years ago, the budgets were going up. They wanted to do a big recruitment drive, and they found out that most people that were actually entering the force were people that actually had family members that were in the fire service. Yeah, so obviously that wasn't a very diverse group of people, and they were keen to be more diverse because they found it was more effective. If you represent the communities that you work in, and Colin himself was really vocal about this, he comes from the bottom up. He said, as a policeman, I've worked in all the areas of Manchester, and I just know, you don't, if there's only a woman in the house, you just don't get in if you haven't got a woman in your team, and he said, if you just don't get the intelligence if you haven't got people that look like that, people that know the culture of the people living there. So he felt he just wasn't effective as a white English male in the areas he needed to work in. And they found the same in the fire service, which sounds a bit odd, but I mean, nowadays fire service is a lot about informing people, preventing fires, teaching people. Is a very community-based service. There's often troubled characters that they engage with to prevent fires. So there's actually a lot of people skills required and community skills. So they wanted to really change, and that was a government directive, so very clear who they were recruiting. So they thought, well, how do we do this? And what they did was, the first thing was they widened their search. So at the moment, getting no CVs in, and I'm sure you recognize that from women as well, you just don't get any CVs in for the roles you're recruiting for from women. What you do, you go to them. So that's what they did. They actually identified a number of areas where they thought likely people would be. So they thought, well, we need to go to the mosques, we need to go to particular types of schools, we need to go to places where women are, but women that may be interested in the fire service. So they, for instance, went to a lot of fitness centers, because that's the sort of, so trying to, which obviously isn't going to work if in some of your, I mean, if you're in CBRE at the moment or in GAS, but I mean, the idea I think would be quite effective to think of where is it that these people are. So which, and is this something I wanted to know, is this something you tried? Where do you go? Have you tried widening your search? I mean, do you want to say something about that, Mark?
I'm still very new to the organisation.
Right.
This is my 7th week with CBRE, but I know that it's it's about trying to establish the skill set and then ultimately fish in different pools, if you like.
Yeah.
I can't really comment whether that's what we've done, but I know that's definitely on the agenda to do that if we haven't already done so.
Yeah. And anyone else who's got something to say about that? And Claire and Victoria, please feel free to chip in, but I can't see you. But Sarah, you can obviously raise your hand if you like. If you want to say something about that.
Yeah, I think.
I think.
Sorry, go on.
We've got Claire coming there.
Research. Yeah. Oh, go on, Claire. You can go.
Are you sure? Sorry. Sorry, Sarah. What I was going to say is we've tried widening our search quite heavily, but what we're still seeing is there's no women coming through. I think we potentially face wider problems, not because we're quite an invisible company, because everyone with gas knows the likes of British Gas and E.ON, for example, who is their bill providers, but we're a service within that, so we really struggle to get ourselves out there, never mind to appeal to women. Yeah, and I think there's a wider issue around STEM as well, as just girls aren't studying the subjects generally that we ask for.
Yeah, what they found in the fire service, they did a lot on the image and I know other companies do as well, by actually having those conversations. So they would actually go to places and meet people. So going to careers fairs, going to job fairs, or going to places where you expect these people might be that you're looking for, and then saying, well, what do you think it's like? Would it be something for you? Oh, no, it's not for me. And I mean, in the fire service, they would say things like, oh, no, it's like really, I mean, that's for really strong people. And I said, well, why would you think that? And actually then, which helps you understand what the audience thinks about you, and also then helps you change their mindset. And they found that especially those conversations, a lot of the people that then entered the selection process, and they asked them, why did you enter? And they said, well, I had this conversation and it sounded really interesting. So they found that having actually speaking with people helped. And Sarah, you were going to say something about that.
So just on widening the search, we are reliant pretty much on advert responses. So we did some unconscious bias training with some of the recruiters because we were finding that maybe they had a perception in their head that they weren't aware of, and they were putting those candidates through. So for example, a construction manager, the image that sprang to mind was a male candidate. So that was trying to break down one barrier. We also are in the process of reviewing some of the job boards. For example, we obviously work for Network Rail. Railway People would be one of the job boards that we use. Are we going to find a lot of female candidates on there? Going to find a lot of women who have their CVs on there compared to maybe 2 to 3 part-time jobs. I think for Cedar Veritas was another one that we looked at. So they're just a couple of things that we've been trialing to try and widen that.
Yeah, I think it may actually be helpful. I haven't got that on here, but looking at that, you're all looking for more CVs from women, and I mean the selection process only starts becoming of interest if you actually have any women on the CVs. Maybe helpful to share with some other things that I know organisations have done that worked. And someone mentioned already changing. Yeah, it's about changing the look and feel of your organisation, because you do want to change the image. And I know in Balfour Beatty what they did. They changed the look and feel of their graduate campaign, and it was very successful. So they actually hired a marketing company, and they worked with focus groups to try different looks and try different branding of their graduate campaign. And they selected colors and images that actually worked for the target groups they were looking for. And it made a massive difference. They got much more responses at their careers fair, and it was early days to say whether that led to more actual CVs, but definitely much more interested at the fairs they were at and the places they were looking. So I thought that was really interesting, because we do know that women typically like to hear more about the context. So if you're in this case in Balfour Beatty in construction, you can show cranes and buildings, but you can actually also show people using those buildings, or talk about sustainability and sustainable futures, or talk about work-life balance by creating new environments that people can live and work in. And suddenly it starts like construction is a very different sort of jobs than something with hard hats and cranes, and the images as well that reflected that, and they found that very powerful. Another thing that organizations are doing, and I think that is something you may all know about, is about changing the language. There are several tools you can use for that. One is Textio, but there's also a free, which is a paid software, and it actually checks for male and female coded words, which we have in our society. If certain words, and this has been done in scientific research in the United States. So what they did, they actually asked job candidates to say which adverts attracted them and which didn't, and why not. And that way they identified that there were certain words that men were more attracted to and certain words that women were more attracted to. So they have a list of, I think, 20 words for men and for women. And for instance, if something in a job advert says we need people with initiative, that have leadership capacities and are top achievers, that would all be words that men respond positively to and think, oh yeah, that's for me. And that women deselect themselves. They're like, oh no, that's not me. So if you change that in, we need people that are good at connecting with other people and sharing information and facilitating change. Those were the types of words that women were more attracted to. So thinking about how you can phrase, and the software Textio does that. It suggests new wordings. If you use some of the free tools, and one of the free tools you can use is the Gender Decoder by Kat Matsfield. Just type that in Google and you'll find it. Then it will actually show you it highlights the words that you need to change, and you can then think of a way of how to phrase this in a way that's more attractive to women. Anyone experience with that? And we know actually that can lead to a 20, 30 or 40% surge in CVs from women. That's quite interesting. Anyone experience with that, or any questions or thoughts on that?
Yeah, we've applied that. We're not seeing, like I say, we're not seeing much success yet, but I think that's to do with the throughput more than anything.
Yeah.
But we have decided to change it because I think it's well recognised, as you say, that certain language appeals to men over women. So I think it'll be more long term if we see the benefits of it.
Yeah, but it goes beyond, obviously just changing that is not enough, right? It's about changing the look and feel, the branding, showing role models. Yeah, so as you say, you can't just, if you just change that, it's probably not necessarily going to work. Something else that works well is obviously talk about flexibility in job adverts. And another thing that works well is actually limit, and we've seen there's a lot of proof now that works, reduce the number of requirements. So think about the top 3 things that you really, really need for this role and leave everything else out. So we find that actually leads not just more women, but more diversity overall. So for instance, I know in the rail industry, Sarah, and you may confirm that, leaving out that you need to have experience in rail. So you're looking for project management experience, maybe in particular industries, but to no longer list rail, and that has a massive impact as well. Is that something you've seen, Sarah? Would be good to hear from you there. Sarah? No, Sarah's frozen. Sarah, are you there? Oh, well, maybe she's on the phone with someone. Yeah, things you can do to get more CVs. Another thing you can do is actually to create connections with women. Typically respond better if they actually know someone. So actually, if they know your company or they know someone in your organization, that can be really effective. So I know that when I was recruited in Siemens, when my sister was recruited in a software company that she works in, we already knew someone in there. One of my friends worked there, and what they'd done, they said to everyone, we need different people in this company. We need people with a new way of thinking. And the manager had described it to the people they needed, and that they were really keen to have people with different profiles than the ones they had. So this guy that met me in the pub and said to me, oh, are you looking for a job? We really need you. I was like, oh God, I hate software. But he then convinced me, actually, he said, yeah, that's exactly the people we need. And often it's, if you ask women, it's often that someone has encouraged them in. So yeah, looking at ways you can use your current staff and get them to speak with people. Another way there is also what happened to my sister. She was at university on a sort of project that, like, I don't know how you call that in the UK, like a third sector type project where university works together with people in organizations on projects. And she then, this company had connections into the university, and she worked on a project for them, and they could ask her in person and say, hey, we like your style. Do you want to work for us? So before she'd even thought about sending any CVs out, she was already poached into this company, which is where she still works today, 25 years later, and she's one of their most senior women now. So, I mean, and the company has grown from 40 people to 600. So there is, yeah, those things may sound like, oh, it's just one person, but this is your senior female in 25 years, could be one of those people you've asked in person. And one of the engineering firms I worked with has tried this strategy and has been very successful for them, in the sense that they now have several contacts in the university. They take part in events events with the Women's Network in Cambridge. And interestingly, when they recently had a job, had a recruitment drive going on, they sent the ad to the Women's Network, who then distributed it across all the women at Cambridge in relevant areas. And they didn't ask them to do this, but just because they knew them, which actually then led to more CVs from women. So getting those connections and knowing people in person is quite important when you want to recruit women. Any experiences with that? Any thoughts on that then? Mark? No?
I think the only thing that I'd add is that Network Rail do have a women's network internally, the Inspire Network, which is certainly, what championed the 20 by 20 project and having a big impact. And I know that Capita, which is the company I work for, are also setting up a women's network. So, definitely seeing results, and I think it's spreading across a couple of organisations.
So how is the Women's Network leading to recruiting more women then?
So like you said, it's about sharing information, communication, mentoring schemes, trying to get more women into those higher level roles, if you like, breaking the glass ceiling, scheduling lots of different networking events for women only, and also getting some of the men, some of the managers to come along and support the network as well. It's an open network, not just for women, but it is to promote women in the organisation.
Yeah, and what the engineering firm found when they did this, and they actually mentioned this in their job adverts, so what they do actually, which is sort of quite clever, I think, they've got like a graduate, like a sort of internship or, a startup role, and they actually made it into two startup roles, one regular one, and one which is called a women's sort of internship, graduate internship for women, they call it. And it's the same role, and I mean, anyone can apply to either advert, but the one for women actually has quite a different description. It uses a lot of those female coded words, but also they describe why they want more women, and they say all the things they already do that show, like the Women's Network, or like the coaching that they offer to women. So yeah, making themselves sound attractive to women. So there's like it's not just changing the adverts or widening your search, it comes with quite a range of things.
Yes, CBRE have an extensive women's network that we constantly promote, and it's about the promotion of talent, and also bringing on the sending the message that we are a diverse organisation. So it's definitely quite prominent within CBRE.
But I think it's also about getting the man involved there, because I mean, the friend that got me into Siemens was a male friend, right? And obviously, if you have a lot more man working for you, there's more. I mean, men have female friends, they have a network. They've got there's quite a wide range of people don't just associate with people of their own gender, right? So there is quite and obviously, if you have a lot of men working for you, ask them, explain to them what you need, and ask them to suggest people and recommend it to people. Then I think very clever what the fire service did was de-bias their entire selection process. And that is something that also, if you're not getting CVs from women, is quite relevant. because the key bit there is making it really easy to enter, taking away barriers to entry. And I mean, easy to enter, I've said, because when I said taking away barriers to entry, Colin was like, no, because that sounds as if the standards are going down to recruit women, which was a big thing in the fire service. Like, oh, are we now just recruiting anyone? No, but we're making it easier for people to enter. So instead of having to go online and finding some form, what they did was they invited everyone that had shown an interest at all the places they'd been to a taster day, and they organized regular taster days. Try out if it's for you, really breaking down those barriers. And they found especially effective for women and people from minority groups, because you think it's not for you, you come and look and you actually get to fit the equipment. You think, actually, it's not so bad. This I can do. Now, obviously different for you, but you can apply this in your firms, because I know Sky are doing this. They have a Women in Tech program, which is a 6-week program on learning, getting up to date with the latest software. But they also offer a 2-year program. So after the 6 weeks, you can enter the 2-year program. And when they just had the 2-year program, which is not just for women, but for everyone, they didn't have so many women joining. Now that they have the 6-week program, it's becoming easier. They have a lot more women sort of try it out. And the engineering company I worked with, a small engineering company, found the same. He said, okay, making it easy to enter. So what he did, apart from calling it sort of graduate internship for women, he also had a line in it saying, if you're not sure, just give us a call. And he organizes regular visits, so you can come and visit the lab that they work in. But so he has like sort of open days. But also he has, just give us a call and pick up the phone and come and have a chat. And he said, especially women are the ones that pick up the phone. And they say things like, gosh, I'm not sure, you're looking for people with physics and mechanical engineering background, but I've actually done material science. I'm not sure that fits. And he then has an opportunity to explain that that's exactly what they need and why, and encourage them to apply, which is fabulous. And in that comes the second step there, address the information gap. So another thing the police do at the taster day, and that this man does with the women on the phone, explaining to them exactly what is expected and how the recruitment process works. What you find, and this is very much information you get from friends, from people around you, and especially people from non-white backgrounds, different cultural backgrounds, or women who don't have friends in the sectors that you work in, don't really know, they're sort of missing, they don't have the same level of information on what is required and what hoops they need to jump through and what the selection criteria are. So actually, to make sure that everyone knows exactly at your taster day or when you speak with them, what the steps are, what you're looking for, what kind of people you're interested in, and giving that information, then make sure that everyone's got the same chances once the selection process starts. Would love to hear if anyone's got experience with any of these kind of things, making it easier to enter your sector, your company, and addressing the information gap. Claire, any thoughts there? Or any questions you have where you say, well, that all sounds great, but I don't know how to make that work? Or
I think for me, it's we get a lot of confusion around the documents that are required. So, right to work checks, for example, criminal work checks, all of this kind of information. We try and make it as clear as possible, and we communicate it from sort of day one, word go. But I don't know if there's any way that we could make it easier, probably. But I think it all comes down to communication and just reiterating documents that are required. I know that you mentioned here support onboarding and engaging staff, so it's really important that they get that message right from the word go. Yeah, definitely. And I think, it is about maybe organizing a day or an hour or a drop-in Zoom session or whatever you can think of, where people that aren't so sure get the support that they may need to actually do those forms. Because I do know what worked really well in, what do you call these things? Like management schools, when you do a master's in an MBA for MBAs,
So what worked for MBAs was also for that what they did to recruit more women, which was very effective, was to have open days just for women. So they do like a conference type day, and you could come there and meet the teachers, meet the tutors, and they would actually have women there that are currently doing it. So all those questions of how can I do that with work-life balance? How do you make it work? Is it possible if I do this in the evening? What is the workload like? What are the teachers like? Am I going to enjoy going to this MBA? Was very, yeah, women typically have a lot more of those questions than men. And they found it was quite effective for them to have, yeah, which is also, I think, making it easy to enter, making it easy for people to get the information to try it out. So other things then, once you have the CVs from women, what you need to do is make sure you measure just skills. This one's, yeah, a lot of scientific proof of this, that, yeah, all to do with you recruit in your own image. So you see someone there and before you know it, yeah, you think they can do it. And your interview is actually no longer, you have a great chat about football that happens for real, you know, for an hour. You think, yeah, this guy can do it. Whereas if there's sort of less of that sort of connection with the interviewer, or people respond to questions in a different way, the interview goes a different way. So what they do in the fire service now is a very structured interview. They actually have, what they did, it isn't just the same 5 guys that usually did the interview. They actually selected a much more diverse panel, which I know cannot be easy. So what they did was actually get a lot of the back office staff who are more diverse in the fire service to and they each question them actually working with role play, where you have the skills that are required for modern firefighters. And I know that works very well. It's worked very well in HS2 as well, to have assessment centers where you're measuring skills rather than, yeah, than actually what people have already done or experienced, or whether you think they can do it. And that works especially in combination with visible role models, which is those diverse panels. Or even if you can't do that, what I really like, they do that in one of the large software companies. They just have them you. So for women, there is someone available, typically someone in HR actually, who you can just have a personal conversation with on the day of the interview, and just ask her, you know, what is it like to work here? Can I do this? Is it flexible? And what is the workload like? And they felt that worked a lot better than having the one senior woman, which is always in the panel, you know, because they do need a balanced panel. These senior women were just, yeah, it was too much for them. So instead, they just have someone available that looks like the candidates that they can have an informal chat with. Any experience with this, measuring skills, structured interviews? Making people like you visible during that. Claire, any thoughts there?
I think, yeah, it all seems to make a lot of sense. Like I say, for having a very diverse panel is actually a good point. I know myself, because I work in an engineering firm, I'm usually interviewed by white middle-aged men, and it can be quite off-putting. So I think having a diverse panel is a really good point. In terms of structured interviews, I think that's something utilities tend to do quite often, especially at entry level. So it tends to be competency based, but everyone's asked the same questions. It tends to be higher up that it's less structured, where it's more of a conversation, informal interview. I don't know what other people's thoughts are around that, but it's whether then that's where people can be, it's less diverse. And I think that's what happens. I know in lawyers, they always say that women only get so far. Maybe some part of that is the interview process, that it's less structured.
Very much so, yeah, because women typically talk very differently about their achievements. So the moment you know that, you can then change the questions you ask, right? So the engineering firm I worked with, yeah, that man was he knew about gender differences and how women are less likely to talk about their achievements. Women are less likely to talk about themselves. So they would talk about achievements of the team rather than about what their contribution was. So he actually made a point of asking those questions more specifically to women and drawing it out. So that, yeah, having some unconscious bias training or gender difference training for your interviewers is another thing that you can do there, especially at the senior levels. But ideally, you just make it competency based also at the senior levels. And that is possible, but it's harder to do.
Yeah, I think one thing I did have experience of, and it was previous employment, it was at Yorkshire Water, and they made all recruiting managers do an unconscious bias training course. It's only a short course, but it was really powerful, actually. It was really good, because it wasn't saying change your behaviours necessarily, but it was just about people being aware that we all have unconscious bias, no matter what. First impressions do make an impression,
Yeah.
and we can't change that, but it's being aware of that when you're recruiting.
Yeah. It's not, yeah, I know it's in itself, it's not particularly effective. I think it also needs to be flanked by other measures, and the more competency-based and structured you can make it, the better, I think, for diversity, and not just for women, right? Just for wider diversity as well. So then, of course, yeah, going on to increasing retention. Obviously, once you need to instantly, the moment you get more CVs from women, you need to start, you need to already have thought about the selection process, because it's such a shame if you've lost them, then the moment you hire them. So all of this comes, unfortunately, you have to implement this in one go, because you also want to make sure that they don't leave in the first 3 weeks. And I know people who that has happened to, you know, I mean, there's a couple of incidents of sexual harassment in the first 3 weeks. And yeah, I mean, these are not big things, but, you know, if you're asked every single day by someone jokingly, oh, are you here to do the coffees for us? It's a great joke on day 1, but, you know, on day 15, by person number 15, you think, I don't think I belong here, you know. And I know people who've left after 3 weeks in environments like this, and I mean, that's something you need to really look into. So what they've done in the fire service is actually, in the onboarding process, they get the new recruits together, and they explain that that they want to be more diverse, but that obviously they're learning, and that they have several things in place to make sure that if something happens that they're not happy with, or something that doesn't work for them, they can report this. So they actually invite them all into sort of a network type or a focus group type environment. And if they don't want to come there, they actually say there is this group for people like you. So people like, there's a BAME group, there's a women's group. You can go there and speak with them about what you'd like improved. So actually that's been very effective for them, in the sense that, you know, it was pretty clear that they needed different shower rooms for women. So the women did join, and oh gosh, yeah, they're all like in the shared shower room, didn't work. But it actually didn't work for people that need to pray either, because they needed a separate room for prayer. There were issues with the food. There were issues with the rotas. Turned out that the rotas can actually be adapted quite easily around prayer times, but you just need to sort of do that. So so these are the things they talk about in the onboarding process. They also talk about the escalation procedures. You know, if something serious happens, there are escalation procedures, and there is anonymous places you can go. But often it isn't. It's about the little things. So there is a place, and these people are they know where they can go, and that it is okay to go there, and that this is something the fire service actually wants to learn about and wants to improve. And I think that in itself, having that conversation, creates quite an open atmosphere. Any thoughts on that? Any experiences on your own onboarding, perhaps, Mark, where you say, oh yeah, we did that? Or
I mean, when I joined, I was buddied up with somebody who had only really been with the organisation probably a couple more months than me, and I found that very useful, just to kind of someone who knows exactly what you're sort of going through, and I found that really helpful. And also I was sort of put in contact with other talent resourcing managers across CBRE to kind of, and one of them took the lead and we had a coffee. It's just they sort of they know what your day-to-day is like, and they can empathize with you, and I find that as you touched upon, the whole onboarding things, I think very key, and also just having people, because some people, you know, you can be working on the same floor with people who have been here 9 years, 6 months, etc. So it's just having that kind of someone to talk to about, you know, this is how I know exactly what you mean.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And I think careful there not to just buddy up then people, from women with women, and people from Nigeria with people from Nigeria. I think it's important that there is that. I think more like what would be effective, I think, is what you're saying, right? To have a buddy,
someone who's,
which is potentially any random person in the organization, and on top of that, some channel where they are introduced to some people like them. And, and I think in that sense, the networks or the research worked really well, because you know there is a place where people like you meet.
Exactly.
And you don't have to go there, and you don't have to meet them all the time, but you know where they are, and you know you can reach out to them if you need to.
Yeah, definitely. I'm afraid
I
I'm going to
was speaking with a black lady the other day, and she said to me how she's talked with her friends. I said, God, how isolating her experience was, which hadn't been the case at university, but in the company she joined, she felt like the only black person, and all her friends recognized this. So I said, are your friends all black then? And yeah, they were. So yeah, having a place in the organization where she could have gone to just talk about those sort of experiences with someone like her. And how to handle things like people touching your hair. Oh gosh, you've got this amazing hair. Like her, she's got dreadlocks. So yeah, I mean, she said, well, no, you wouldn't come in a new employee and go and touch the hair, would you? I mean, how come that's okay when you do that to me? So having a place where you can talk about those things and getting those stories out in the organization, I think is quite important. Did you say you needed to go, Mark?
Unfortunately, I've got a meeting at 2:30, so I'll listen in for the next sort of 5 minutes, but then I'll have to go. But it's been really really useful.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Are there? I don't suppose. Could I be sent the slides that you have?
Actually, I can send you the slides and the recording.
That'd be brilliant.
And this may be interesting for everyone. Then you'll also get an invitation to the LinkedIn group. So feel free to always ask questions there. And I mean, I put my events there, so you hear about future events, and an invite to sign up to my event list. So you get invites regularly. So all of that will be coming into your mailbox one of these days.
I'll share with Hannah as well, because I know she was very keen.
Oh, good. Oh, well, thank you so much.
No worries. Great to meet you virtually. Over.
So we'll move on then. Engaging staff in this process of widening the search and debugging the selection process. What they did in the fire service, they got a lot of negative feedback from the current crews. Oh yeah, sure, you're just lowering the standards. And surely, I mean, the way we've always done it worked for us. And actually, they then invited those people to help out on the taster days, and they didn't have a single crew volunteer to come and help out on the taster days. So they had to sort of badger and cajole one of the crews to come and help. They were then so enthusiastic about seeing all these young people, and actually they instantly saw, by having the conversations on that taster day and teaching those people how to use all the equipment, how valuable it would be to have them in their team. So some of the skills that they were looking for, engaging with the community, making sure they instantly saw these people had knowledge that they didn't. So they got back really enthusiastic. And then the next time they did a taster day, they had several crews volunteer. So that was a very powerful thing. They also actually said to them, look, we're just trialing out the assessment, we're trialing out the structured interviews, and invited them to be part of that, and invited them to give feedback. And that was very powerful, because they said, look, this is actually not a real life situation. If you're doing a role play, in real life, this is what would happen. And then they actually changed the role plays. They changed the structured interviews based on that feedback. And when you involve people like that, people that are currently doing it, and that doesn't matter whether they're currently gas engineers or whether they're currently software engineers or project managers, they start seeing the benefits, and they start buying into this process. So that was very powerful for them. They also engaged the leadership, and I'll throw that in and then open it up to you, Sarah and Claire then. because the leadership weren't at all keen at all. They are obviously keen to make sure that they achieve their objectives and that fires are safely under control, rather than some kind of diversity objective. So there is this push from the government for more diversity, but the leadership locally isn't necessarily very keen. So what they did is invite women in non-traditional male roles and get them to do talks. So they had an RAF pilot coming in, they had someone from the army coming in, females, and talking about what it was like to be a female RAF pilot. So that was educating the senior leaders on the issues these women come across. But it's also then, seeing is believing. You know, if someone can be an RAF pilot, surely they can also be a firefighter, really. I mean, that was, for them to meet women that can do these jobs was very powerful. And another thing they did once they had recruited more diverse people was make sure their successes were visible. So if someone, which apparently they do some assessments regularly throughout the first year. So if one of their diverse people, someone from a BAME background or a woman, had come top of the class, they made sure they actually communicated this to the leadership. So, and share other success stories of what had happened and how these people had contributed. Now, I mean, it's not a job done. He said this is an ongoing process, and there's still a lot of work to be done in engaging the leadership further. But they found what they did was very powerful. So I'd love to hear from you. I mean, engaging staff, engaging leaders. Have you tried that already instead of widening your search and debiasing your selection, and what has worked?
I think Claire
Sarah.
mentioned it before, but we've had some training courses for managers.
Yeah.
So both with our client network rail and with ourselves, because what I've found is that the message really does need to come from top down. So it's good as well if you have some key figures. So for example, females in those leadership roles as well, to sort of spread that message internally. And I think that the success has been good so far, but it really needs to be some of the key decision makers. So not necessarily HR teams, your resourcing teams. It's a message that needs to be filtered across all hiring managers, all decision makers. So, you know, I think it will change sort of perspective and hopefully increase retention and engage staff, but it's not something that's going to happen overnight.
Yeah, I think important now, what I liked in what the fire service did was finding out what it is that people worry about. Oh, well, we're not going to be effective as a crew if we've got someone who only functions half. You know, what is it that people worry about, and address that head on? I think that is quite powerful. And you see that a lot. You know, I was speaking to, and then actually to a man in a big electronical in Philips, and he said, I know mixed gender teams just work better. And the fact that he knew this, you know, as a male manager, to get that message across to other male managers and find ways to share that, you know, this is my experience with mixed gender teams and this is why I want them. I think it's way more powerful than actually having some senior leaders say, oh, this is what we want to do. Which I'm not saying you don't need the senior leaders, but I'm saying you need to sort of address it from two sides, basically. Yes, Sarah, you were going to say something.
No. I was just agreeing with you.
Yeah, and Claire, any thoughts, any questions, anything you'd like to say on that?
Yeah, I think this is something that I think my organisation really struggles with. I think, especially higher up the organisation, it is predominantly male, and the women that are in the organisation and in typical female roles, such in customer services and HR. And I think we're just not very strong on recognising it. But I know I've worked with a colleague, it used to be in my team, he now works in consultancy, and he said as a young man coming into the business, so he came in straight out of university, he then worked in Australia for a little bit, and he said that having different ages, different backgrounds, actually he felt more comfortable than working in my organisation, just because he was saying you go into a room and if it's investment that needs approving, it's lots of middle-aged men who've been in the organisation years, and even to a 23-year-old man, that's very intimidating, even though he's probably going to be them in 20 years. So it was actually, I never really thought of it that way. So I think you're right. It's it's not just about women. Having diversity, it makes everyone feel more relaxed because it looks like it looks outside, not just, it's like this weird alien world that we come into that we don't look like we should look.
Well, and getting those stories out, right? Because I also, in the engineering firm I worked in, there was 2 of the younger men said that they were considering leaving because they'd just been in a different type of environment at uni and they didn't feel this really worked for them, having just men, and that they preferred, and I thought just them saying that and their managers hearing this was incredibly powerful. They're like, yeah, you know, here's good people that we really want to keep and they don't like it here. This is not the place we want to be. So getting those stories somehow round and gathering those stories that's very much, I think, in the seeing is believing, right? Seeing that it works, having that experience. But I liked it how they combined it with the selection process in the fire service, you know, inviting those people to in your panels, in your assessment centers. Yeah, even in the beginning, you know, when you're widening your audience, can you involve people from the leadership or from the staff in that? I think that can be very powerful for them to see how this brings benefits. And then embedding it further, of course, they're not done. So that's where you sort of need to, look at the future, and that's what they're doing in the fire service. They're looking at a more national approach, sharing experiences with other crews and other cities. They're looking at retaining the new staff, which, just the onboarding is obviously not enough. A lot needs to be done, which is about flexible working, which is about looking at promotion and advancement processes and tracking those people and see if they move up in the same way that white males do move up. And if not, finding out why that is and encourage them to move up as well, or give them the support that they need. It's about recognizing achievements of everyone, making sure they're encouraged and invited to future roles and to move up across the command chain. So there's a lot to be done there. It's about looking at maternity leave policies, reviewing shift patterns so they work better for carers and for people with children. So they've still got a lot to do there as well, making sure they actually retain these people that you select, which is, I'm sure, things you'll be looking at as well. Any thoughts, questions? I mean, we've got a few more minutes to finish on that. Claire, perhaps?
No, nothing from me.
Yeah. And I mean, to finish, is there anything that you wondering about, that you sort of would like to know more about?
I think for me, what I'm really, because I suppose, when you talk about having the push in terms of change. So we've been, I suppose, had the hand force that our regulator wants to see us being recruiting more diverse workforce. So it's good that they recognise it. And I'm a personal advocate of diversity inclusion, but where I'm struggling is to get traction within the business, other than it's a box ticking exercise, and actually seeing the real benefits. So if anyone had any thoughts on how to engage with those senior leaders so that they were bought into it, would be helpful.
And have you thought about inviting other organizations that have done this already?
No, I haven't actually. That might be a good, because I used to work for an organisation that's very good on this, so it might be something to draw on, actually. Yeah.
And I know Women in Science and Engineering regularly organise sort of roundtables for senior leaders. Now, obviously, to get them to go there, I mean, if they already don't think it's important, is more difficult. So I think bringing someone in may be actually easier in that case.
Yeah, no, good point. Thank you.
Yeah, because I did like that, how they brought in the RAF fighter pilots. And I thought, just getting them to see, that this is a benefit, but bringing in other organizations. And then actually what you need to have, I mean, I can send you I've got a blog with all the things you need to do to get senior leaders on board. So I'll send that to you.
Oh, fantastic, thank you.
And none of them are easy, right? I mean, obviously one is just having good data, having really sound data for your own organization.
Yeah.
but there is a list of other things on there that you may want to have a look at, which I'll make sure we include in the follow-up to this session. How does that sound?
Sounds great, thank you.
Okay. Sarah, any final thoughts or questions? Or
no questions at the moment. I think some final thoughts would be sort of around the open days. So, you know, more around networking, getting, you know, because we have a lot of women's networks, women's calls, but maybe actually having more events, like you said, and, you know, coming in and having that informal conversation has certainly given me something to think about.
Yeah, and I mean, what I would do if I were you, I would just actually ask a few people and say, well, what can we do to be more of an open place where people can just have a taste of what we do? I mean, do we do something an afternoon, a couple of days, a conversation, you know, sort of, and give them some examples that I mentioned, you know, the MBA open day, or, you know, a taster day. Yeah, something where you can try it out, see what it's like, or see what kind of roles you have in the company even, you know, and you could, yeah, actually target that at returners, at at different audiences. You could sort of target it as to sort of, yeah, people who've been in the army perhaps, or, you know, there is different target groups you could do that for, and specifically invite to those, yeah, taster sessions, open days.
Yeah, and I definitely echo Claire's frustrations as well with the senior leadership. You find that where senior leadership are on board, you know, it's such a different experience than when they're not. And obviously with such a big organisation such as Network Rail, you get different parts of the business operating in different ways, which can be quite frustrating. One area is doing something brilliant, why is the other area not following suit?
Yeah, well, I mean, two things you can do there actually, which I mean, you may have tried already, getting the senior leaders involved. I know we talked about that in the last Gender Smart talk from Vodafone. They have a very clever way for senior leaders to sort of do a carrot and stick approach. Say, oh, look, this department is already doing really well. How come you're not? Or the other way, oh, you're already doing better than these and these departments.
Yeah.
So that could be very powerful. And another one is where you actually do that and say, look, yeah, sort of making it visible how others seem to be winning awards and doing really well and getting the real benefits from this, and you're not. So yeah, sort of looking at the competition between different groups of people within an organization, because I mean, clearly in Network Rail, some departments are really getting great successes. So clearly showing it can be done.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so depending on who you work with, you've got to sort of look at their competition, or look at or set up a meeting and say, look, have a chat with this person and find out why it works for him and what he's done to make it successful, because he's managing to do this. And so do a more helping or a more competitive approach, either way, depending on who you're dealing with. Oh, well. Thank you so much. It's great to have you here, and looking forward. I mean, we've done all this, that if you get the follow-up, just as I explained to Mark, and look forward to seeing you at any future events. I do want to mention actually my big event coming up. I'm starting a training academy for D&I people, which will be doing like what we've done today, sharing models and steps to success, but then on a much more structured way to get people quickly up to speed in the area of D&I. Because we found, my partner and I, that there were a lot of people starting in this, but not bringing the 10 years experience, not knowing what to become a member of and where to get this information, and to get those people quickly up to speed. So, I mean, you'll get an invite for our first event, a one-day training event. See if it's for you, or perhaps for someone you know. Feel free to share with people in your team or in your organization. Thank you so much. And hope to see you soon.
Yeah, thank you for your time.
Good
Bye
luck.
now.